Now, I'm joined by someone who really does know about the Middle East. Dr. Marwa Osman is a journalist and academic. There's almost no end to the list of publications and television stations on which she has worked. She's based in Beirut, in the Lebanon, hitherto mentioned by Kevin in Woodbridge, and I'm glad to say she joins us now. Dr. Marwa, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Galloway. It's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you. Doctor, tell us first, how do you calibrate the scale of the opposition protests going on right now in Tehran and one or two other places in Iran? Is it big? Is it small? Is it existential? Is the government afraid that it might fall?
You know, what existential is what we saw 4 days ago in the funeral of Qasem Soleimani, or Lieutenant General Qasem Soleimani, when we had 7 million people go to the streets of Tehran to mourn their commander, when we had 1.3 million people in Ahvaz, which is actually populated of 1 million, which means people coming from extremities of Ahvaz came to get included in this mourning procession for Qasem Soleimani. What we saw in Kerman, more than 2 million people come down to also both mourn and celebrate their commander because he meant so much for them. That is an existential flock of people in the streets all across Iran. What we saw in the videos, in the amateur videos that were taken for 2 days now from supposedly Iranian cities. We don't exactly know where they initiated, but one of them, which we saw the UK ambassador take part in, was from students in one of Tehran's universities, where they were very saddened by the tragedy of the Ukrainian plane and they wanted to express themselves. Now, don't let me get started with how they were expressing themselves, because we would get into somewhere we're not talking right now, because there was a lot of preparedness planned, if you will, actions against the government. But looking at the videos, the numbers was no more than 200. And that's exactly what Iranian news media, diverse Iranian news media, was reporting about, that it was a couple of hundred people in the streets who were very angry about the downing, which they should be. The wrongful downing of the plane, which was basically said by all high members and high-ranking commanders and officials in Iran, where they apologized and they admitted it. And now we are hearing reports that Ali Shamakhani, who is the head or the commander of the Supreme National Security Council in Iran, that he's getting ready to step down from his position as a result of this tragedy. Now, it's legitimate for people to be angry, and it's legitimate for people to voice their anger. But why is it a concern for Donald Trump that urges him to tweet in Persian to talk about a couple of hundred people who were escorted by a UK diplomat?
Who knew he could tweet in Farsi? He can't even tweet in proper English.
And that's the funny part, where his Farsi was actually better grammar than his English. That tells a lot about his staff here. But when you see this surprising, if you will, attention and elaborate attention as well to how he's standing with them, how they are fighting against their government, and it's just 5 days after he ordered the assassination of the second highest ranking member of the Iranian government, basically when he's just a diplomat, as you just said, delivering a message, or there to deliver the response for the message coming from Iraq and Saudi Arabia. Just days after killing their commander, and just hours after saying that he wants to increase the sanctions, the economic sanctions that are suffocating the ordinary Iranian public, that he wants to stand by them and take their hand into liberty, freedom, and whatever he's saying, whatever nonsense he's saying. When you look at that, what kind of an existential threat are you talking about when you tell me 200 angry people go down to the streets? If I want to have a party right now in my own house, I would have 200 people right here in Beirut protesting that I am actually bringing some sort of discomfort for the neighborhood. That's how it's being viewed by Iran itself. And if people don't believe me, just wait on it. Wait till the 40th day to commemorate the 40th day of the martyrdom of Lieutenant General Qasem Soleimani, and see the millions of people flocking the streets again of Tehran, Ahvaz, Kerman, you name it, any city in Tehran. People don't understand the vast impact of this assassination on a society like that inside of Iran, where we have different ethnic, cultural, religious groups living under one nation. They don't understand how important this person was for them, as an image for them, as a protector as well. People forget that Ahvaz had attempted explosions, terrorist attacks against Ahvaz, terrorist attacks against other places and other cities in Iran that were initiated, launched by ISIS and the likes of ISIS. They don't understand that the threat was imminent. They always ask, what is an Iranian general doing in Iraq, Syria, or Lebanon? They don't understand the fact that this region has the right to have allies. They understand the fact how NATO operates. They understand how a US-led coalition operates, but they don't want to understand how a region could stand together, have allies, and fight against ISIS, which is bred by the US and the people who the US are allied with in this region. They cannot understand the fact that we can actually be friends and fight together against an existential threat on our lives, but they can actually normally call what the US is doing liberal freedom and democracy.
Well, of course, General Soleimani comes from a lot closer to Iraq than the American generals and other factotums that have been trying to run things in Iraq for the best part now of 20 years. Now, all but the sheep know that when a president of the United States begins talking directly to a foreign people in their own language and describing how he stands by them, then there's already a regime change operation organized by the United States underway. And that was evident to me in the videos the protesters themselves shot. This is straight out of the playbook of Hong Kong, of the Maidan in the Ukraine. This is another American attempt at regime change. Question is, will it succeed or will it fail, Doctor?
Definitely it will fail, especially if it had any margin of success before the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani. It definitely went down the drain after the assassination. Trump had actually a golden ticket in his hands, and he didn't know how to use it. What he did was go against what his consultants and his own Secretary of Defense said. Mike Esper, just a while ago, we were reading, like 3 hours ago, there was an article that says that Esper says that he had no evidence that would implicate General Soleimani in any attempt to target any U.S. embassies, just like Donald Trump was saying. Even his Secretary of Defense, even his staff was not sure why they were killing this man. It was just that Benjamin Netanyahu wanted him dead, and there you go, he's dead. But no, it will not work out this way, because it didn't work out this way in Iraq. It didn't work out this way in Syria. Why would they think for a femtosecond that it would work out in Iran? Look what happened in Iraq, for example. Protests, more than 500 people were killed. Now we are hearing about reports that those who were killed were actually assassinated by top-notch snipers. Who were these snipers? Who were they working with? Why were they trying to create civil war inside of Iraq after this country stood together to fight off ISIS and actually managed to do so with the help of Iran and other state and non-state actors in the region as well? Why would that work in Iran when the Iranian government has definitely tried its best to benefit the people from whatever they can get out of this economic sanctions, because it was suffocating everyone at the time when you have other protests going against governments for corruption, going against corrupt politicians, against a non-existence infrastructure. But if you actually go to Iran, you don't have any of this. It's an actually functioning government and a functioning society. They are just hurting their economy because of the sanctions. Lift those sanctions and watch how the Iranian people will live freely, obviously, but will live burden-free. That's the most important thing for them. They cannot buy their medicine. They cannot find the medicine because of the sanctions. They cannot actually fix the planes. The plane was shot down by mistake, but other planes would have fallen. Just last year, a plane was about to fall in the sky because they were not able to maintain it, to do maintenance for the plane because of the sanctions. The Iranians were not allowed to do those maintenance. They're allowed even to buy parts for the planes because of the sanctions. What does that sanction, which is a 101 security for national security and for civilian security, have to do with whatever politics you have head-to-head with Iran? This is what the U.S. is doing. This is what the U.S. is hoping for. But look, it's not even working in Hong Kong. How will it work in the U.S.? In Iran. It didn't even work in Iraq. How is it going to work in Iran, especially now when the situation is out in the open? Everyone knows how much Trump eagerly wants to see the Iranian government toppled, which will not happen because it's not a dictatorship. They don't even understand how the regime or how the rule of law actually happens in Iran. And why should I listened again to your guest? He was saying that he does not accept the Sharia law or the laws that are put in place in Iran. Who is he to say that he accepts it or not? There's a society that accepts it. Why should he, as a Westerner, have an opinion about the law of another nation? Because we all know that laws are dependent on how society functions, what are tradition and what are morale and what are values in a certain society, and also upon certain religious factors as well. Why should a Westerner who lives in an absolutely different society, different community, different set of cultural backgrounds and historic backgrounds have a say of how a country which is 6,000 miles away is functioning? I don't understand how this, why would I have a say in how the US is functioning itself? Why would I have to say anything about Trump's impeachment? It's not my problem. We just want them out of the region. We want them to take their beautiful guns and machines, how Donald Trump actually put them up, and get out of our region. If they want to come in, they can come in friendly and have diplomatic relations with us, and not a neo-colonial relationship or an imperial relationship. It's not going to work out this way. What does actually Donald Trump want from Iran? Why has no Westerner who actually abides by the rules of the mainstream media, by the blind rules of mainstream media, asked the question of what does Trump want from Iran?
Well, I'll tell you what, Doctor, let me interrupt you just because of the hour. The Defense Secretary, in the statement you referred to just a few hours ago, said that the US was ready for talks with Iran without preconditions, but that Iran had to start behaving like a normal country. What do you think they mean by that? And is this a silver lining? Do the Americans really mean talks without preconditions? In which case, let's have them, surely.
Well, historically, there was no evidence that the U.S. has ever initiated talks without preconditions. We don't have any evidence of that. But what do they mean, behave like a normal nation? Do they want them to behave like the U.S., God forbid?
Yeah, like them, I suppose.
God forbid. Do they want Iran to turn into a neo-colonial imperial power that has military bases in countries where people initiate draft bills in their own parliament asking them to leave, and then they would actually put their foot down and say, no, we're not leaving, despite the fact that this is your actual independent decision? Would they want Iran to become a nation that bombs, that drops bombs? 25,000 bombs were dropped at the time of Barack Obama. Would they want them to do the same thing? Would they like to see Iran bombing funerals and weddings because they suspect of a certain intelligence operation going on? Would they like to see Iran blockading the Gaza Strip, for example, like the Israeli entity does, or blockading Yemen? More than 10,000 children die per week in Yemen. It's actually more than 1,000 kids per day that is being buried by his parents in Yemen because of the blockade and the war. This is how they want Iran to behave. How would they want someone like Iran to open its arms for the U.S. when Iran is actually cornered by every side by U.S. military bases, and the entire region is blowing up in war upon war because of the U.S. malign presence in the region along its biggest proxy, which is the Israeli entity? When you see fire in your neighbor's house, would you invite the fire over, or you would take protective measures to make sure that the fire doesn't spread into your own house? And then make sure to help your neighbor, because if you don't stop that fire there, it will definitely come into your house. What are they thinking about, and how are they able, and how do they manage to make their people believe them? I have no idea.
Dr. Marwa Osman, you're a terrific talker. Thanks for being our guest this evening on the mother of all talk shows.